Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vainglory European Summer Live Championship here. 2016, day 2. What a mouthful there, gentlemen. I like how you're swaying back and forth in unison, but, you know, coming down to it.
What you're talking about.
Well, apparently they cannot see, so it's all good. Maybe it's for the best. Either way, they did see one of the teams ready to go, the trophy there that these guys are playing for. And, you know, we've already had our first casualty. Rising Lotus is out.
Yeah, unfortunately, one of these teams had to be the first team eliminated, and it is Rising Lotus. And they're going to be joined momentarily, though, so you can't feel too bad for them.
Okay, well, we'll get to that prediction.
Have another 3 friends in the stands with them. Oh, man.
I'm baking you just too much for me sometimes, man. But coming into this one, it will be the second of the deciders here, so somebody does go home. Will it be SK or will it be GankStars? We'll find out soon. Well, I mean, I said yesterday, confidence in spades. A lot of these teams coming in very, very assured of themselves that they're all going to #1. But when you're looking at such a situation like this, Fuji, I mean, you got to keep on to that confidence, right?
Yeah, I mean, only one of these teams can move forward. One of them does go home today. So this is where they have to leave it all on the table. We talked about this for the first series. Now going into the second series, if you've planned anything, if there's anything that was specific to a comp you were hoping to pull out later, maybe when you had an advantage, you can't wait now. This is where you have to use the best you've got, and you have to play with the best you have. And I think these teams are ready to do it.
Yeah, these two teams definitely looking ready. You can see a shot of SK there on the stage. Both of them are up there and getting themselves set for a very important matchup. Again, loser goes home.
Yeah, and disappointing finish for either side is the key combo that you keep saying here, Mr. Bacon. And you're right, because, you know, SK Gaming, I do remember back in the spring, they were in a very similar situation. It was actually the second series. But, you know, when it comes down to it, having the very last game of the day being played out and the possibility of you getting so far, but just kind of going home after that, it weighs down a lot on these guys. And these are two powerhouse combos. They've been around the scene a while.
They really have, and SK Gaming even specifically has wanted to kind of negotiate their prowess in the scene because people haven't been taking them all that seriously for a while now. They've been struggling quite a bit, readjusting the roster throughout the season. But when we look at GankStars, their opposing team, these guys are the ones that are really hungry to be able to take the second seed they came in with and push it into the finals with TetnoJJ, IraqiZorro, and nettetoilette. So this is a strong combo.
Yeah, this is the team that they've said that they want to be able to run with, and you can see your player to watch here, TetnoJJ.
Yeah, TetnoJJ definitely is going to be the individual to watch simply because with Iraqi doing a lot of the shot calls and strategies in the game, it's going to be up to Tetno to really set the pace in the jungle, to really get in the face of the enemy team and make them respect GankStars Cerberus. We can't let them get rolled over, and some of the things we saw yesterday with Tetno was while he was putting a lot of pressure on, he did have some troubles finding the exact targets he wanted to get to, a little bit of reservation, not diving in when he needed to go all in. So we need to see a little more confidence out of them today.
Yeah, we need to see more confidence like he had on that Rona, coming out with the surprise pick, went unkilled in the game that they did win yesterday. So if he can repeat that kind of performance, it could look very good for GankStars.
Yeah, well, they are going to have to try to do something to that effect because SK Gaming, as I said, they're not new to this one. Rising Lotus might have been their first time, but this is not the first rodeo for SK, and they've actually now been to a few championships, Bacon. I remember the big announcement back in the day when they actually, you know, happened to pick up that team, and it was like, all right, one of the oldest organizations in esports, they're now here in mobile gaming.
Yeah, going to be using this roster that they have here. And a lot of shuffling, not just this season, but just all throughout SK's history in Vainglory. A lot of roster changes. They had 2 teams at one point, consolidated back down to 1. And now they're showing up at these live championships with what they said they feel is just a really powerful lineup with Raph in the jungle, Bayou, and Cream kind of being able to swap their positions freely as needed. And that's going to lead us to having Cream be our player to watch. He has actually played lane for them the last 2 days, despite coming in here as the roamer initially. So they are going to be, you know, that's where we have to keep our eye on. Is he going to stay in the lane? He's always been that superstar that can kind of play anywhere you need him to. and they're looking to have him fit in and play them into the later matches today.
Yeah, I definitely think they'll probably keep Cream in the lane simply because he does execute so well on the current meta heroes that they desire for that specific position. But that being said, Bayou was kind of the original guy known for his lane picks. I think it was like Jewel that he played all the time back in the day. So seeing him in the roam position has been very entertaining. And I definitely think it might be the mix to take the win today, but we'll have to see.
All right, well, we do have game number 1 just about to begin here, ladies and gentlemen. I've been told that the draft is on its way, but there's a lot of experience between these guys, and IraqiZorro, it's his first time here at EU in person.
Yeah, well, first time in person, wasn't terribly successful yesterday. Going to be looking for a different success here today as we get into the first draft. One more really interesting point about these two teams, they have yet to play each other this season.
There you go. This is the first time for everything.
This is the first time for everything and the last time for everything in this specific case. So this is where it all comes down with GankStars going for the Lance ban on side A. This is something we've seen consistently from them so far in the tournament. They do like getting rid of this hero on side A, and SK Gaming in return is trying to decide, do we let a Lyra go through? Do we let a Samuel go through? Do we let the Adagio go through? Who's it going to be, Bacon?
Well, right now they're hovering over to Lyra. I think any of those three are a solid ban, and you're leaving up both of those, the other two, so that you can then go ahead and grab 2 of those 3. I actually would have liked to have seen them not ban one of those 3, perhaps. And again, let 1 power pick go over to your opponent and then pick up 2 of them for yourself. But it is the Lyra getting banned away. That leaves open multiple options here for GankStars, but looks like they may want the Adagio.
Yeah, the Adagio priority from GankStars has always been very high. This is once again kind of getting into a little bit of what we talked about before with predictability. Teams most likely know GankStars is going to be picking up this hero. That being said, if they can execute with it, it doesn't matter. But SK Gaming still needs to respect the power of the Adagio regardless of where he ends up on the team.
Yeah, I believe Iraqi ended up actually playing the Adagio twice yesterday in their best of 3, but a Catherine pick going to come out, and this is something we've been seeing into the Adagio, just looking to get that guaranteed stun, forcing the Adagio to have to reflex block that stun, and not only that, but the shield, the reflecting damage can do some serious work to your opponent if Adagio happens to be targeting you.
And Glaive comes through for the side of SK Gaming. I do like Glaive. He's able to make a lot of power plays in the early game, really catch people out of position, which I think is pretty nice in terms of SK's strategy. Perhaps they know that if Iraqi's on this Adagio, a couple successful ganks might put him just far enough behind. Kind of going back a little bit to the Catherine pick, it's also extra level pressure on nettetoilette as well to be able to block those ultimates, but now you've got a Samuel in the mix for GankStars.
Yeah, a little surprising to see Samuel this far into the draft. Again, this is one of those things that we've been mentioning in a lot of these drafts. When he has gotten past the first 3 picks, you almost have to wonder, because he has been so dominant thus far these championships.
It looks like we might have a bit of a surprise draft coming out of GankStars today with the Sky pickup. I might assume that Adagio now has moved into that roam position. Sky going to one of the carries. Tetno, I do think Samuel tends to play a little bit better in the jungle, so we'll have to see.
A lot of the teams agree as well on that.
Yeah, and it's 3 range, so it's very risky going into Glaive and Catherine, but we do see the Ringo. Interesting last pick from SK Gaming.
Well, 2-0 for the ban earlier on. We'll have to see his first appearance here, but with all the calls, it looks like it's actually a lover's quarrel. It's going to be Humanist and Scoundrel.
All right, thank you very much. That's right. I kicked Sona out of here. I got the better half of the Scoundrel and Sona pair. Sona, forgive me for saying that one. But Scoundrel, how you feeling? You already got the day going.
Already got the day going. Pretty sick series to start the day off.
Truly.
And we've got another best of 3 coming our way. It's going to be amazing as well. SK going to be against GankStars. And honestly, I have to talk about this draft when we get into game and Humanist. I know you're really good on color aspects as well.
Let's do it.
Let's break this down, dude, because there is some really interesting picks coming through here. I feel like a Frostburn from GankStars would almost seal the deal.
A Frostburn would seal the deal. Well, that's pretty easy win condition right there, buddy.
I genuinely feel like it's almost at that point where a Frostburn would potentially almost seal the deal for GankStars.
Well, my goodness, if that's the case, I'd say that that was a 1 draft right there. But this is going to be all about these plays, and I think that, these teams, they do stack up against each other pretty well. Immediately out to the lane, and how would you expect the aggression to play out here in this match?
In the lane matchup there, I think Cream actually, as long as he's dodging Malice and Verdict, which can be easier to do in the early game, probably have a better time of things versus Samuel. I think if you're going to pick a laner to go into Samuel, Ringo's probably one of the better laners to choose. My worry is that this is going to be a composition that I think will be centered around likely double weapon power. I don't know how well Crystal Power Ringo would work in this situation, but now we've potentially got a little fight on our hands.
Yeah, there's going to be the early engage Afterburn. Tetno, he's going to be stunned up, chopped down. Easy kill for SK to start things off. Let's see if they want to go for some more net, eating a bit of damage. Bayou's front lining for his team like a boss, but that's going to be all she wrote for the early game here.
Well, it's just because of that level advantage on Raph. He had both his ability to do a bit of splash damage with that automatic crit, which obviously was great for bursting through a level 1, and had that afterburn in the tank as well. TetnoJJ only level 1 himself, relying on just the forward barrage, no Suri strike in the tank. It was easy pickings right there.
Easy pickings indeed. Yeah, once you get Afterburned out of that position, it's quite easy to get that kill. And we're going to see Bayou hanging around this lane. We know that Samuel can apply that pressure. Scout traps down, exactly what you want out of your roamer thus far.
Bayou just taking an aggressive positioning, either forcing GankStars to try and check that brush where he is, and with that Storm shield, he should be, absolutely fine. However, Raph now is in a vulnerable position, and nettetoilette has spied him out, so maybe some aggressive movements and Bayou forced to react.
Yeah, Raph's quite happy to be able to pick that up. And there's going to be moving down as a unit here. I think one of the strengths of this SK lineup so far we've seen in the early game, they move together. And with this double stun, if they can get on a target, they'll definitely be able to eat them up. But nobody's going to be found here, rotating back up into the lane as that unit, staying together. I think both teams maybe just waiting for that respawn in the jungle.
Absolutely, just waiting for another jungle rotation to come through. Bayou and Raph, despite having the early advantage, having that level over TetnoJJ, they have to be careful when they get into jungle fights versus nettetoilette and JJ, because if they don't manage to land the CC they want to, nettetoilette actually taking lots of damage here. Here comes the Achilles shot.
He's stunned up, he's slowed down. Can Cream get it? No, he can't. In fact, IraqiZorro has made his way up, drifting dark forward. The Malice, the verdict lands. Easy kill right there for IraqiZorro. What a play.
Sniper coming out from IraqiZorro right there with the drifting dark, the AoE damage, the acceleration to the Malice and Verdict, just able to pick off Cream. A little bit over aggression onto nettetoilette as well. You do have to respect the fact that Gift of Fire has a lot of healing and has that dot over time, but now nettetoilette the target for Raph.
Yeah, not respecting Raph. Raph with the afterburn. Can he get Iraqi into a poor position, or can Iraqi out damage them? The scout traps there. The damage is as well, and double kill for Raph. Very nice plays for SK.
Yeah, very good rotation by Raph there. Immediately knowing that nettetoilette didn't require an afterburn to take out. I think he was hesitant because obviously he nearly lost the kill with the basic attack, but that final splash damage came through and he managed to pick him up in that swing round with his W. So using the afterburn then to reposition IraqiZorro, and obviously then a nice join by Cream after coming back from base and being sniped out, manages to help secure the kill there for Raph. So very good play by Raph, and actually I don't know why we're surprised. Raph is one of the best glaives in Europe. He has always been known as one of the best glaives in Europe. It's been a signature hero for him for a very long time, and he is making us see why he is so feared, or was so feared in the past. Maybe he should be feared again, Humanist.
You know, I think anybody going up against this team right now should definitely respect what Raph can accomplish on this glaive. And if you're going to be moving forward like that, you definitely have to have your abilities up, because you need to be able to trade with him. A bit of damage coming out, Cream getting those attacks out onto net, but Tetno makes his way up.
Absolutely. I would like to see early reflex blocks from all of these guys on GankStars. You get singled out by a Merciless Pursuit or get singled out by an Afterburn. You're a dead man standing.
Well, it could be a dead man laying down right here. Tetno trying to move backwards, forward barrage, doing a lot of work.
What else do dead men do?
You know, just stating the obvious here.
Just chilling on the side of the wall.
All right, we'll switch this around for you. We're just trying to illuminate what's happening here.
I love you, dude.
It's going to be, well, we'll figure that out later. Tetno stunned up. He's going to be slowed down, but Trades finds the kill onto Bayou. Not really respecting actually having this Adagio there.
Also, you've got to remember that the Storm Guard from Catherine, Skye doesn't proc it with the amount of damage that she can do with the single hits of forward barrage. So that's why Skye traditionally has always had a good time versus Catherine. Doesn't really matter about the Storm Guard barrier, and obviously can just burst through with that forward barrage, and that's what you saw there. Just wasn't really as tanky as she thought she would be. You always have to respect what Skye can do to a Catherine, and especially that's why I'd like to see. It's going to be Crystal. It's going to be weapon power Skye. So I wouldn't imagine Frostburn will be on the cards ASAP then, because IraqiZorro probably going towards a Shatterglass, but he could build into Frostburn there. And I would be happy, because I still think Frostburn is a great way of controlling the pace of the team fights for GankStars. And when you've got Weapon Power Sky, maybe you don't need to worry about having absolute insane damage output by Samuel early on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things we actually see, and if you look back to the NA builds, you'll see guys like Gabe Dizzle actually build up like a Shiver Steel.
Yeah.
As you get your item progression, hopefully there's enough damage coming out of that Sky. But we see these guys positioned in each other's opposite bushes, drifting darks out. Raph finds the stun. IraqiZorro, he's going to be chopped down. Cream has the damage. Can they find anything else? That's going to be the end of the engage.
Well, that is exactly what you know Raph for, his ability to pinpoint targets with Afterburn, especially with no reflex blocks making their way to the fold yet. IraqiZorro easily killed by the combined burst damage, and it's actually going to be Crystal Power Ringo here. So I think they're really saying that they need that Hellfire Brew to target one person and one person only. You burn someone through very quickly and then deal with the second person afterwards. So it's always going to be a one-person game until you've thought about it and killed them, and then you deal with the rest of the team fight following. Their ability to burst, especially in the earlier portion of the game, will be very, very strong. And as we get to the later game, we all know that Crystal Power Ringo does scale moderately well. So he will always be relevant as he goes with this alternating current build as well. Obviously that synergizes very nice with Silver. So yeah, I can see the thoughts behind this composition coming out here from SK.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, twirling Silver up, he'll have a lot of damage. You see right here trading with IraqiZorro, but realizing Tetno is in the area, Cream immediately will reposition himself. There's a nettetoilette. He's doing a pretty good job. We don't see Adagio in Rome too much. And we'll hold this thought. Maybe we'll break it down in a second. It looks like they potentially will engage. Death from above does come down, not landing exactly how Tetno would have liked. These guys posturing quite aggressively.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I also wanted to point out that it was a starting Iron Guard contract for Bayou as well.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that after this fight, maybe.
Well, the Hellfire Brew is going to come out. Iraqi taking quite a bit of damage, just absolutely deleted TetnoJJ with the basic damage coming out of Raph right there. And the Hellfire Brew, I mean, it could have been miscommunication. It could have been just a way to force Iraqi back. Big burst coming out. There's going to be the stunned landing. SK, did they overstep themselves? Oblivion comes out. It's going to be a miss. SK, they just get what they want to get right out.
Yeah, but nettetoilette is hungry for more here. The fountain has been burnt by both sides, and now the range advantage lying, but IraqiZorro stunned up, but SK not on the same page here, Humanist.
Yeah, I mean, SK, they've done such a great job of abusing these double stuns thus far, and I think really you got to give a lot of credit to Raph. I think he's stolen away the mid camp 3 times thus far in the game. If you can steal away your opponent's mid, it really sustains your ability to just stay aggressive on the map.
Exactly, but also, you know, limits the gold income of Tetno as well. And actually, Tetno's done a pretty good job of keeping up with Raph right here, despite the aggressive moves in terms of counter jungling. Only 4 CS behind at this point in time, so he's also had his impact on the map too, and it hasn't been put too far back by the plans of Raph thus far. It's been pretty okay for GankStars as it goes. I would like to see a Crucible coming out for Bayou, and I think that's where he's going. I don't want him to make the same mistake that we saw against Roma Adagio last time, because they will be using that Burst of Judgment essentially on cooldown during team fights. You need to have the Crucible to answer to it.
Definitely, and if you want to move in for those engages, you have to be able to do so safely. The reflex block that you were talking about has now been picked up for IraqiZorro, so I think that's great. nettetoilette has picked up his own as well. So you imagine those are the guys that they want to frontline for their team, where they can put in a little bit more vulnerable position.
I'm liking that Crucible's coming out for nettetoilette so readily as well, because if you can block the Blast Tremor or block the Hellfire Brew, those 2 major skills that you really want to try and fix. And obviously then, unless you're relying on singular reflex blocks for both Tetno and Iraqi to block the Afterburn, you also have that insurance policy versus Afterburn too. So I like the prioritization in terms of early reflex blocks and defense coming out from these guys. Way earlier than you see some people tend to go for it, especially on a Sky, for instance, but very, very good in terms of thought processing for defense here.
Oh, Raph moving in quite aggressively. It's going to be Tetno actually picking up the majority of those camps right there. He'll stun Tetno up and just hang out right in this brush. It's going to be a nice forward barrage to predict that he is hanging around. Over to the east, we're going to have a collapse now. GankStars, are they in a vulnerable position? Afterburn over the top. Tetno eating a lot of damage, but it's Cream already down. Drifting dark, gliding through, and Tetno finding another kill. Now it's Bayou on the run. Last man standing. And you have to imagine he's going to be going down quite shortly here. This is going to be the triple kill for Tetno, coming alive in the ace for GankStars.
It was that Verse of Judgment from nettetoilette right there. Nothing to block it out. There was a reflex block on Cream, but he didn't use it, and Raph had to use it to keep himself alive, but he was just unable to get the damage required. Let's have a little look here. So this is the Verse of Judgment. Locks up Cream, he goes down immediately. Raph did use the reflex block, but at this point in time, he's in between 3 members, and Bayou just isn't able to do anything. Obviously, Bayou, as the Catherine, relies on, facilitates other carries. She really doesn't do much herself without something like an Aftershock, and without that Crucible, you saw you saw what kind of impact that Verse of Judgment has. But now the Crucible has been finished.
Yes, exactly. And while that replay was going on, there was an immense gold payout collected by GankStars. So it looks like they're going to start to try and abuse this lead that they're building up. Reflex block out of Cream. A bit of damage. Is the death from above going to be forcing it backwards? And that's the kill going over to Iraqi. You don't always have to land that death from above if you can force someone into a bad position.
Exactly. Zoning is something that death from above is so good at doing. And essentially what he forced them there was either you walk through the death from above and get stunned, having used your reflex block already, or you try and run around the turret, at which point they were able to collapse on him through positional advantage. And this looks like this turret's going to go down. Raph afterburns away.
Yeah, and Raph, he'll eat a bit of that malice and verdict. It's, I think, one of the toughest things you see. Raph, he has to be so careful to decide when he's going to engage because they can poke from so far away. If he doesn't get in and actually isolate a target, it really leaves them in a dangerous spot.
I also like Weapon Power Sky into the double melee too. Just because, you know, if Raph's looking to jump onto someone in the backline, it makes TetnoJJ's damage output probably a little bit more reliable than a Crystal Power Sky would be against someone who's so overly aggressive in terms of positioning. Plus the fact that Afterburn is hyper-mobile. You always prefer to have a Weapon Power Sky against hyper-mobile targets because you can consistently land effective damage that doesn't require you to be hitting all of your skill shots.
Exactly. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, and well said there, Ex-Scoundrel. Let's see, SK, they're hanging around this lane, but they don't have that turret to back them up. So you see a much more cautious posture from them, a much more cautious positioning right here. GankStars starting to sniff that out. You see nettetoilette moving forward. Not the tankiest of roamers, but when you get into a position like this, you can definitely frontline for your team.
Absolutely. Plus Gift of Fire gives you that kind of pseudo tankiness. You know, you're able to sustain through damage. And actually, most people won't be focusing nettetoilette. You also have to realize that with, you know, Agent of Wrath on TetnoJJ, you're really facilitating the ability for him to go off the chain in terms of damage output during a team fight. And plus, you have to worry about that Verse of Judgment. You know, nettetoilette himself is a frontline zoning tool. You get too close to him, you run past him, you ignore him, you could put yourself in a situation where Verse of Judgment's going to be a real pain in your butt.
Yeah, and that's never fun. See, SK...
A man who speaks from experience.
Well, okay, we'll let that one go. We'll talk about that later. But you see these guys forced to actually teleport back to base. They can't even make it out to the jungle shop right now. The SK feeling so much pressure. It's such a dangerous position to be in right now. Death from above will land on 2. Of course, he's just throwing this out as often as possible. Really just a harassment tool. And of course, if anyone does completely get caught out, they will go down. Hellfire Brew is going to come out. Blocked. You're going to see the Afterburn in. Tetno eating a lot of damage. Can the burst come through? No, it can't. Fountain's forced out. Now Bayou on the run. Bayou should go down here. One more attack actually coming out right there to clean that up. Now a 3 versus 2 situation in which GankStars can essentially take whatever objective they want.
So this is one of the interesting aspects of Vainglory that I always do like to talk about. When you have a very aggressive jungle roam combo that look to dive, and then you have something like a Crystal Power Ringo that follows up with only a Hellfire Brew, you have to be sure that you're going to pick off a kill. You have to be sure that when you commit with Afterburn, you commit with Merciless Pursuit, you're going to pick off something. Because if you don't, you lose. Every single time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I'll agree with you on that one. I think one of the things also, you know, you talked to a guy like Dienzio, I think he said it best. When you're playing this CP Ringo, the best thing you can do for your team is start off with a Hellfire Brew, but you want to do it from a position where your opponents cannot see it coming. That way, it's a much harder for them to reflex block that, and then you can follow up on top.
Exactly, and obviously, if you manage to reflex block, what I'd like to see is forcing the reflex block from Afterburn so that Hellfire Brew lands all of its damage. Most of the damage from Hellfire Brew comes after it's landed. So forcing the reflex block first onto something like a low damage ability like Afterburn, and then getting the Hellfire Brew afterwards, it's all about timing, could be more effective here for SK Gaming. I think that may be a path that they should consider, or even trying to get Merciless Pursuit blocked and then get Afterburn to reposition into the Hellfire Brew. That's maybe a path that they could take. The problem is for me that they're going for TetnoJJ. That's just allowing IraqiZorro and nettetoilette to just deal with Cream, stop him from getting anywhere near. He can't use Twirling Silver at all. And that just, you know, completely takes out one member of SK's lineup. And then once SK Bio and SK Raph get into the backline and are unable to take out TetnoJJ, they start to retreat because they have nothing left. And then they just get taken out too.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where an item like War Treads definitely comes into play. You need to be able to close the gap with Cream at some point to apply damage if you have your team on the back line. You see Tetno with this breaking point really just building up stacks immediately, and the damage output is insane.
And War Treads would help. But then you still have to run through nettetoilette, who's probably going to be channeling Burst of Judgment as soon as someone makes the engage. So then you have to make that decision and probably burn a reflex block. And at that point, IraqiZorro, with the Drifting Dark, will just be wailing pain on Cream, who doesn't have his own gap closing abilities. So it's a really tough situation for SK. I really feel for them.
Yeah, it looks like the turret's going to be going down here. I don't know if that was the blast trimmer you were looking for, Bayou. And I have to be quite careful. Raph eating a lot of damage, a defensive afterburn, and SK just completely on the back foot.
And this is the issue here. Maybe you don't even need Frostburn when you're just winning before you needing to kite them. The problem is that, you know, if you don't get an engage and you look for it and you chase too hard, you're going to walk straight into what Samuel is best at doing. And Samuel is best at kiting. He's an insane kiting hero. You know, you walk straight into the Drifting Dark moving backwards while he's firing Malice and Verdicts, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what he's absolutely best at because he does so many things so incredibly well. He can chase you down, he can kite backwards, and right now, just being in the lead, like, what can't he do?
Exactly, but for me, I feel like of all the heroes available in Vainglory, he's one of the best at kiting, just because of his ability to use Drifting Dark backwards and use Malice and Verdict. And then you're seeing it illustrated in this case very nicely, because every time they try and search for an engage with War Treads, or you know, they just run in with Bayou, he's able to just use it and start kiting backwards, deal huge amounts of damage to Raph, who really hasn't considered that much shielding at this point in time either. I think he's working towards an Aegis, but it's a little bit later than maybe he would have expected versus a Samuel that's doing so well. So, you know, he's getting absolutely annihilated every time he looks for something.
All right, well, maybe Annihilation could be on the table here. Death from above zoning. It's going to be Kraken starting to be captured up by GankStars. But SK moving in. Raph, he's trying to find damage onto Tetno, but taking way more damage than he's dishing out. But Cream finally finding a target, getting his own damage down. Oblivion isn't going to land. Raph, he's sleeping and he's dead. Bayou, he's going to be short to follow. And that's going to be Cream going down. Double kill over here for IraqiZorro. And this is just all for the taking.
Yeah, let's just break that down specifically. So you see this is way before they're going to be starting off the Kraken. They immediately start to pull SK into a choke point, which is very good for Samuel and Sky. Obviously, the short amount of distance they have to use in terms of angle use, then the better they have in terms of landing their skill shots. And look at Bayou. He goes in for a Merciless Pursuit, doesn't land anything. Hellfire Brew comes through and Raph tries to go, but he gets blocked with the Crucible. And now they're kind of left again. It's that point where they don't have anything left in the tank afterwards. A very late Fountain use by nettetoilette as well is allowing TetnoJJ to turn things round. And one of the biggest impact skills there was IraqiZorro's use of the Oblivion. And despite all that wonderful stutter step from Cream, he wasn't able to get the work done. So it was just a combination of things that went incredibly right there for GankStars.
Yeah, one of the other things I had my eye on the blast trimmer coming out of Bayou is he actually had 3-second cooldown when that engage happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, you see Raph taking half of his damage before that can even come out. It's just really tough to engage.
You felt like they could have let the Kraken do a little bit more of the work for them before absolutely searching for the engagement. Bayou was so desperate to make a relentless pursuit happen.
Well, speaking of desperate, this could be the last play coming out. Blast Trimmer does land. Iraqi, he's going to re-goose. Bayou's eating the majority of the damage, holding that fountain as long as possible. Pops it at the last second. Cream, though, isolated. They're going to turn around. Not enough damage to find one target. The ace coming out, 13-6, a massive net worth lead. And GankStars, they just find a way to take fight after fight after fight, and game one will be theirs.
And that was another case of everybody's skills weren't on cooldown at the right time. Blast Tremor wasn't there, I don't think, or it was right at the start. Hellfire Brew was still on cooldown as it started. And you saw there, when you jump in onto a Samuel as a glaive, especially with this crit power run that you run with the Tyrant's Monocle, you need to have someone to allow you to back up your damage and just blow him up instantly. That was not happening there for SK. And it's because I've always felt very awkward about these compositions because you have to be forcing a retreat from GankStars to make it work with something like a Ringo in the backline trying to follow you up. If you're not going to be forcing a retreat, then Ringo gets cut off from both your Catherine and your Glaive. And once Glaive and Catherine have committed and they don't get anything from it, they're kind of dead in the water. And they were easy to take out there for GankStars.
All right, well, of course, you said it was a tough composition to execute, but we got a couple guys back at the desk, maybe can break it down a little bit better. Forecourt, thoughts on the game?
Well, I'm consistently reminded here, Humanists, that we're in Europe and Crystal Ringo is a thing, and unfortunately,
Or they want it to be a thing.
Well, they want it to be a thing. Unfortunately, it goes down 0-1 in this matchup. But GankStars and SK, they've never actually faced off against each other, and now SK is up a leg.
Yeah, well,
They're down a leg.
T2 is up
Yeah.
a leg, but it's their first time
Saying out backwards
meeting
there, yeah.
in this season. They 7 weeks of competition, and they never actually played against each other, which is pretty impressive.
Well, I thought that's, a lot of the Evo 8 was kind of advertised as such, but with new teams coming into that and old teams exiting, it's really hard to make that happen. So it is really kind of fun that, it's the first time for everything. It's like what you said, though, Fuji. It's also the last time for these two as somebody goes home.
Yeah, it is the last time for one of these two. And I think what we really want to see coming out of SK Gaming is just a little bit stronger draft. I continue to see these Ringo picks coming through and just have lots of questions behind them when there's just other priorities like Samuel you could potentially pick up, or just anyone in the laning position that's going to give you some crystal power late game carry if you're going to do a CP carry out of lane. But even if Ringo is the priority, I'd like to see some better build prioritization. We have 100% piercing ultimate. We're not putting a shatter glass on there. If you look at a lot of the game we just saw, there was many times Ringo wasn't even able to get most of his damage off. And if you're going to be ulting right away, you need as much impact right from the very beginning as you can get. And the Broken Myth AC just weren't doing it.
Yeah, the Broken Myth, it's all about those stacks. And when you're firing off your ult at the start of a fight, if you're using that to engage, you're not getting any of those stacks up. And unfortunately, that last big team fight around the Kraken, we saw it, and the ultimate got blocked, and it did maybe a fifth of the target's health, and that's just not going to be enough when it's Samuel.
Yeah, that's very true, especially when you're running into the Adagio. In essence, while I think I would have liked an Arden in the roam position for the GankStars team slightly more than the Adagio, just due to the protective utilities for an Adagio carry or a Samuel carry, it didn't really matter simply just because there wasn't enough damage coming out of the side of SK. Glaive didn't have enough defense to really go into these crystal scenarios. And the heals coming out of Adagio and the fountains just counteracted the Ringo ults. So it seemed that every single move SK wanted to make that game, GankStars just had a better one.
Yeah, it also felt like maybe there was some kind of communication errors going on with SK. There were a couple times where we saw the blast trimmer come out, and the commentators mentioned it as well. The blast trimmer would come out and they wouldn't engage on it, and then they would go all in on an engagement just before blast trimmer came back off of cooldown. And a lot of things just kind of felt a little bit off there for SK.
Well, you guys even brought that up before the game. Decisiveness factor. Yesterday, there's a few calls from these guys okay, maybe engage, no, maybe not. Communication, jitters for, stage, whatever it is. The decisiveness, especially when you go to use those big cooldowns, you got to make it count.
Yeah, you definitely do. And I think GankStars has stepped it up today. We see their decisions being a lot more crisp, a lot more clear. They seem to be a lot more assertive once they have the lead, something we didn't see yesterday. SK still has a little bit of work to do in Game 2. I don't know what they're going to do in draft, but I think this is the most important thing for the teams right now. You need to secure heroes you feel comfortable on that work well together synergistically.
So, speaking of draft, it is going to be here just momentarily, ladies and gentlemen, but game number 2, this is important, Bacon.
Yeah, absolutely. If GankStars wins this one, SK's going home with an 2 straight losses, and that's not really what they're going to be looking for.
Well, whoever does lose out this series goes home with 2 straight losses. And, well,
I was going to say the 0-4 again, but
be.
then obviously it was the only Rising Lotus that had the 0-2 yesterday. But either way, we're into the draft for game number 2 of this matchup. Samuel taking off the board right away. Really like that ban. Finn going to be the target for GankStars.
Yeah, the Finn ban definitely is interesting. I'm not really sure SK's put a ton of priority on this roam, so it must be something more along the lines of GankStars has something they want to run, and the Force the Cord could ruin whatever this strategy is going to be. We do, though, allow Lyra through, but that means Adagio is once again open for GankStars.
Yeah, and they're going to take that immediately anytime they can. Again, this is now the 4th time in 5 games for the Adagio to be played on the GankStars team. That's going to be paired up with a Lance. That's a pretty solid combo.
That is a very solid combo. We saw many wins come out of a very specific champion of North America with these two starting on B side. GankStars following suit on that powerhouse. Now we do look at SK Gaming picking up the Sky. If you don't have Bright Bulwark against you, Sky does have a lot more flexibility in the team fights, but what they round it out with will be really important because the last pick for GankStars can be a complete mystery.
It's going to be really interesting to see the Lance Sky matchup. That's one of those things that if the Sky can avoid the Impale, Sky can really dance circles around it. But if a single Impale lands on the Sky, Sky's pretty much dead. Kroll going to be the final pick here for SK, though.
Yeah, the Kroll actually ganks and team fights with the slow coming out of Lyra can be very devastating. I would only assume we're going to see the Sky in lane. There's going to be a lot of opportunity to move very quickly to the enemy, to go Suri Strike over or to use a portal in. So GankStars has to decide what they finish this out with, and it is a Arden. So we're going to see the Arden, the Lance, and Adagio, such a strong comp that we've seen in the other championship, into a more unique style from SK.
Yeah, triple roam, guys, but courtesy of the Milky Way Galaxy, it's going to be Humanist and Excoundrum.
All right, thank you very much, Forecourt Jester, our analyst, breaking down that draft so wonderfully. Excoundrel, game one, it was pretty hype, but coming in here, I think a little bit more firepower on both sides.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Cruel. Has always been that kind of pocket counter pick to an Adagio. Haven't seen it work well that many times thus far. Only when they've invested in damage. So I really want to see a breaking point first item for Raph here. I know what Raph's like. I know he likes to be aggressive, so I'm assuming to see that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was talking with Raph about his playstyle, what he likes to build, things like that. And his favorite heroes, he just said he likes these high damage dealing, but frontline tanky kind of heroes. That's why he likes the Rhyme. That's why he likes the Kroll. So I'm sure he's going to go quite hard in this game.
Absolutely, but IraqiZorro has had a lot of games on Adagio throughout this championship. So expect him to have a fairly large impact on this particular hero. But TetnoJJ and nettetoilette, Arden Lance combo here. Hard-hitting, lots of CC. Should have a pretty good early duel versus Bayou and Raph as well, if they manage to land their Impale.
You know, you can make arguments for so many different compositions to go with this core Lance, but Arden is my personal favorite. We talk about it as being a bit of a slingshot, and if you can give that extra durability to this Lance and a little bit of move speed, what can he not accomplish?
Exactly. You know, you either power him in with that Vanguard to get the Impale, or you do it afterwards to allow him to land multiple basic attacks. It's a very strong combination, and plus, Lance loves to fight in these arena-style, boxed-in environments, and well, Gauntlet does exactly that.
Exactly. And you even look at it paired up with the Adagio. Adagio, not that mobile of a hero, so if you can give him that little bit of a bonus move speed, he'll be able to chase those targets down.
I always like to think Lance is like the fire delivery system, especially when you have the Gauntlet in there as well. You throw the Gauntlet down, Lance goes in with the Impale, Gift of Fire is one of the best ways to deliver that to multiple targets, especially if they get locked up in the Impale. So there's a nice little combo going on here for GankStars.
Yeah, we'll see if they'll be able to extinguish that fire. I'm sure Lyra's going to be able to control that area. It's actually kind of interesting when you see the Gauntlet, the Bright Bulwark can go down and oftentimes kind of negate the effectiveness of that.
Absolutely, I totally agree with that. Another thing that we have to recognize is that never count out Agent of Wrath's effectiveness during a team fight, especially on hit effects. Actually, nettetoilette goes in very early here with Blood for Blood. Wrath gets locked up.
Stunned to start off from Tetno as he slaps Raph in the face. No respect. He's going to move forward. There's your Vanguard. That's the slingshot we're talking about. Impale does land. The Sigil had healed up Raph, so he had a little bit of move speed, maybe just enough to get himself into a better position with that Bright Bulwark as well. Raph able to get himself out of that one.
Yeah, and now IraqiZorro. Raph comes through.
Yeah, Raph, he's going to be locked on, but turns around. Tetno, dun-dun-dun-dun, I am here, and that is the first blood for GankStars.
First blood right there, an over-aggressive Raph. Like you said, he loves that aggressive playstyle. Didn't respect that Tetno was literally only about 5 meters away.
Where was the respect?
Yeah, I know, like, oh, Tetno just bashed me out of the jungle. I know what I'm going to do. He's probably not made it to Kraken area yet. I'm just going to go straight on to Iraqi, but no, unfortunately punished for it by Tetno. Also, you've got to remember that Lance is one of the better heroes on hit effects. And we have one of those built into the kit of Adagio. Agent of Wrath can be super effective here if you give it to the Lance. You know, multiple people getting hit by well, literally his Lance. Obviously, it lands across multiple basic attacks. They can land across multiple targets in a line, so Agent of Wrath can be super effective in that scenario, especially if you get a multiple-man Impale.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's what SK really want to try and avoid. We talk about specifically the Lance into Sky. If you get locked down, you're so incredibly squishy, and perfect job out of Bayou. He sees the aggression coming out of Tetno out of that brush, he drops Bright Bulwark, and there's just no way to follow up on that.
No, especially with these two melee heroes that like to get the movement speed going before they make the engage happen, especially with Vanguard. I like that, I think Bayou is going to be MVP here for SK Gaming if, you know, these Bright Bulwarks are going to be super crucial at keeping both Sky and in some senses Cruel safe. So definitely looking forward to seeing Bayou's play here. My only issue is that there's very good peel for IraqiZorro against the Cruel specifically. You know, one Githyan wall can essentially stop Raph in his tracks when he's trying to take out Adagio, and that could prove fatal to the chances of SK, but you do have a Crystal Power Sky coming through, so that always can, and we've seen it in the past, single-handedly carry sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very hit or miss on both sides. These guys, there are multiple ways that you could approach these fights. We'll have to see how they break it down, and you know, barring these guys getting into an engagement here very soon, Excounter, well, we'll see. Actually, Net looks like he wanted to rotate up the backside, did have that flare out, so he sees Bayou. A bit of a collapse coming in, but doesn't look like GankStars can completely close the gap. Tetno maybe looking for the impale if one of these targets lingers a little bit too long, but they're just hugging this turret. In the meanwhile, you do have Raph in the jungle. He's going to secure up that minion mine. So both teams have captured their own, but GankStars, they're just sitting here kind of attempting to siege, but not really getting too much done.
They don't have a good siege, though. I really don't think they should be trying to go into that particular scenario. They have great jungle fight. They should be trying to force objectives, make things happen in the enemy jungle, because you can see in a siege scenario, they're just going to get batted away by Cream, but Tetno lands a big impale, but no follow-up for GankStars.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel actually that it was very nice that Tetno canceled off, realizing very similar to game one, how Ringo was forced to hang out on the backside for SK, that Adagio maybe would put himself into a vulnerable position if he did move forward. So nice job there.
I think that the GankStars game plan should evolve, but look at this. They've made a good play to come on the backside of Cream here.
Backside, Cream's in a vulnerable position, but a nice Surrey strike right there. Impale's gonna miss as well. Cream needing a lot of damage though. Nice kill for Iraqi. That's 2 kills on the board for GankStars. And you assume that Cream would be able to get his way out of there, but no.
Let's look at the difference here in terms of early support items. A massive prioritization for nettetoilette to go straight for that fountain, whereas you're actually a fairly long way off the Bayou right now.
Raph rooted up, stunned in place. One more attack would have been enough, but the gift of fire is there anyways. 3 kills to none. SK really struggling the last couple minutes.
Can GankStars bait them in? Can GankStars say, wait a minute, we've got fountain, maybe they don't know, maybe we can make them think that we're weak, go for it.
Not if you keep killing them.
No, yeah, I know.
Like that.
But you know, there's always that chance of a turnaround on turret with how aggressive GankStars are being as well. Now they're going into the enemy jungle, they have that fountain as well, but they are just going to take away the healing camp and back off.
Now I ask you, Scoundrel, are GankStars able to accomplish this pressure just because of the draft? We know Lance, he's so incredibly strong early, but Kroll should scale better than him. Is there a time where it should start to switch in the opposite direction?
Yes, if they continue the way that they're playing now, if they continue this hyper-aggressive movement in the later game, they might get punished for it. What I'd like to see from GankStars is an evolution of tactics. I'd like to see them move from that hyper-aggressive lance looking for the impale towards a kiting lance using Githyan Maul to knock Cruel away and allowing Adagio to kite backwards. That's hopefully what we'll see from GankStars. But as it stands, they can continue this aggression because they have the advantage. The more pressure they can put on now, the more rooms for mistakes they have as the game progresses.
Yeah, well, talking about mistakes, maybe SK making a mistake to not control the middle area of this map a little bit better. Look at the vision coming out of GankStars right now. When you can control almost every brush around the middle part of this map, you know exactly what your opponents are doing, and the element of surprise is almost everything.
Oh, Cream just dodging out the impale there, but TetnoJJ not had enough just yet. Bayou now has his own fountain, so things will be level pegging in terms of support item. But there is those boots coming out very quickly here for GankStars. Movement speed so important to both nettetoilette and TetnoJJ here.
Raph just trying to get that heroic perk up right now. He had completed the Shiver Steel as well. If he can get onto one of these targets, slow them down, Bayou can follow up with his sigil. I think you can take one of these targets down, specifically if they can get on top of this Adagio right now. The biggest thing is Cream not getting caught, and that's going to be the gauntlet that you wish you never threw.
Yeah, that's the gauntlet that you definitely don't want to be seeing on a replay. He was trying to catch someone on just the edge of it, using the brush and the area of vision that they had to try and have a surprise gauntlet, essentially. nettetoilette goes in aggressive here.
I love what Net did. No, Net jumps in. That allows the Gift of Fire to go down. He can get himself back out. He's quite durable. Perfect.
In fact, there's something I didn't think about. 2 Gift of Fire delivery systems. Both Blood for Blood and Impale allow that to happen, maybe even combat roll to it.
Yeah, I call it, that's the Molotov cocktail strategy. You just get right in there, deliver that fire.
Well, there you go. And it certainly looks like it's working out for GankStars.
It is quite well thus far. They're building up a small net worth lead, but I think they still need to keep on the gas here. But this is the whole siege pressure we're talking about, but they're not getting too much damage down onto the turret. Raph forced to hang out in this area. Let's see if they want to accomplish something here moving forward, or is this just full defensive tactics?
The problem with sieging with 2 melee heroes is that you're always going to be on the back foot compared to people who have got multiple ranged heroes, because you always have to commit yourself further towards that turret, which always lends the opportunity to take more damage for the defending team. So gonna lock up Cream here, massive damage.
Ooh, that's the slingshot coming through. Cream absolutely annihilated. Bayou could not save his ally when the damage comes out like that. Impale will miss out of Tetno, but it doesn't matter. Healed right up. And of course, the Vanguard will be coming available for this Arden any moment. Now, Raph forced to hang out up in the lane just to defend this turret. Sigil's coming out right now. Net eating a bit of damage, but they are trading on this turret. A lot of damage coming right back out. Net's very low, but holding that fountain. It's a double impale. Bright Bulwark's down. Can they find the kill? Yes, they can. Turret as well. GankStars getting everything.
TetnoJJ, give yourself a pat on the back. Those double impales coming through once again for the lad. And he gets a huge amount of damage to that Sorrow Blade as well.
I asked Mowgli yesterday, I was like, how are you landing those 2-man impales? You're just so godly. And he's like, well, when they stand together like that, I just throw my ability and no big deal.
And that's that Sorrow Blade as well. You know, Tension Bow also very good on Lance if you can land those kind of impales. But, you know, they line them up with the impale, you get a double stab with your basic attack, and with the Sorrow Blade, it's very hard hitting at this point in time. Plus, like you said, multiple Molotov cocktail delivery systems here. Lance was just the target of choice this time for IraqiZorro, and they were able to burn through. Very, very solid play from GankStars right now. SK look on the back foot. They've got to turn things around or out of this.
How do they do that, though? What is the method? How do they get back into this game?
Stall like crazy, hope that Skye gets to a point where she's got 3 or 4 items and just can single-handedly carry. You need to just make sure that you're really respecting the range and the ability to engage from the Lance. If you can stop that impale happening, you might have a chance to defend as much as possible. But right now, Raph getting very aggressive like this.
Yeah, it's Tetno putting a lot of damage out on the turret. Death from above will land a stun, but Gauntlet's down.
3-man Gauntlet.
Bayou, the impale, the stun right there as well. And Iraqi just chunking through Cream, but he stays alive. It's Raph locked on to Tetno. Maybe not the target he wanted, but that's the target he chose. And they are able to turn around. Regoose, find the damage. That's the kill out. 6-0 for GankStars, 11 minutes in.
Wow, and GankStars turn around what looked like a pretty poor situation for them. Once they committed to Cream, you felt like they were on the back foot in that particular situation, but Raph, once again, isolating himself, got collapsed on by the retreating camp of GankStars, and also the Githian wall there knocked him into the wall, so he got stunned up and allowed IraqiZorro to just come in, gift of fire to make sure TetnoJJ stayed healthy, and then picked him off with those basic attacks. They need to be essentially just batting GankStars back at this point in time. You know, if you get a fight that you don't end up dying in, that is a win right now for SK Gaming. They need to make sure that they're just buying time and getting gold through that ambient gold generation and through farming up as much as they can. The problem is that it's going to come to fighting for global objectives, which is going to snowball out of control for them, and that's going to be the real issue.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, we have Dr. Sona on the cast, but it should be Dr. Iraqi the way you describe it. He's just keeping his teammates healthy, and right now, they got to be very appreciative of that.
Nice pun, mate.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're still going here.
We're still going. We're not going to stop mid-cast, guys. Don't you worry, buddy.
Tap me out. Oh, these guys, it's really actually a position right now where you don't want to throw away the leads you have, so you got to be careful how you do continue to approach this. I imagine that GankStars, they're just kind of biding their time until Kraken gets out on the map. They'll take fights where they can, but really no need to completely force a fight here.
Yeah, and also GankStars, they can just force objectives at this point in time. They've got massive level advantage. They've got huge gold advantage. They can just starve out the enemy jungle, win through taking things like Goldmine and Kraken. They root up Raph here.
Yeah, Raph, can he get himself outside that the gauntlet? Yes, he can, but he's going to die right outside the gates anyway. Now, GankStars in a 3v2. Cream doesn't want to get impaled, but he is. The Githian wall to follow. They're diving under turret. Net eating quite a bit of damage, but holding on to that fountain has Atlas as well. It's going to be boots activated, and GankStars, they apparently don't care about turrets at all.
Absolutely not, and why not if you manage to lock up the Cream in the impale. However, It was a nice pickup onto Raf, who once again takes a far too aggressive position for my liking. And GankStars making the best of the situation. They take 1 kill and retreat, and now they can potentially look for gold mine. Now they can force fights with their massive level advantage, like I said. And either SK Gaming react and probably die in a teamfight scenario, or they just say, we have to give this up. And if they give it up, that's just going to give more and more forward potential for GankStars and probably be sealing the game for them.
You know, Net is doing such a good job of these. I'm not going to count how many scout traps are out on the map right now, but I would love to have an actual counter to see the difference right here. But no matter where SK move, it's not going to be a surprise. GankStars know everything.
They literally know every single brush, and actually Raf again runs in, maybe the target. There goes nettetoilette.
Oh, Raf, he doesn't have boots available. Bright Bulwark's going to be on cooldown for just a touch. Now Iraqi is vanguarded. He's going to be able to get himself into a better position. Raf's trying to lock on, but Verse is going to come out. Death row buff right on top. Raf's still alive. Can he stay alive long enough?
How is he still alive?
Goodness
How is he still alive? Oh.
They will find the kill. Ridiculous streak coming out right here as Iraqi's 7-0-1 Bayou. A little bit of CC, but he's able to get himself out of that one. That was insane how long Raf was able to stay alive in that fight.
Yeah, but he just doesn't have damage right now. Like I said, he has had to prioritize defense. Shiver Steel and Aegis, he's only got a Blazing Salvo. There is literally, the only point of Raf at this point in time is to apply weakness stacks. He's not even really going to be a significant damage threat to IraqiZorro. And he's just not surviving through that collapsing damage coming out from GankStars every time he tries to go in. And you saw how effective the Githian wall is against him there as well.
And the thing is, Net has an Atlas Pauldron, right? So if you get in there, you just Atlas him and go from there. It's quite easy. I mean, you imagine you almost have to block that for him to have an effect right now.
Exactly, and if I'm completely honest, Raf is...
Please, don't lie to me, baby.
Raf is a useless player right now on SK. He has almost no role.
Dang, I thought I was going to be the savage one.
No, it's not that it's anything to do with Raf. It's just the way he's built and the prioritization in terms of defensive items for nettetoilette. There comes the gauntlet.
Over the wall, Cream stunned up. Can they find the follow-up? Oh my goodness, Cream with the Suri Strike to reposition forward barrage. It's doing a bit of damage, but maybe not as much as he would hope. Now Raf in the front line, he is maimed up. That's the Atlas going to work, so a nice disengage from Raf. SK find a way out of that one, but my goodness, those gauntlets over the wall, they're so exciting.
Oh, TetnoJJ is gonna go. I'm just doing my humanist impression.
No, you can't do it. It just sounds, well, no, I don't want to say it right now on stream. 9-0 GankStars just absolutely dominating.
And the biggest issue for me is SK doesn't have damage. Like, even with this Eve of Harvest, which is built because Cream wants to try and sustain himself through the forward threat of nettetoilette and TetnoJJ, just don't have the damage. Like, you can't even burn through that Gift of Fire healing coming out from IraqiZorro right now. And like I said, Raf is there to soak up damage and apply weakness stacks. And with just a singular damage threat with only 2 crystal power items, I don't see how they end up doing enough damage to kill anyone, especially with this double Aegis coming out for Iraqi and Tetno.
Oh my goodness, you know, it's not every game that you're going to be able to draw a smiley face and win, but I feel like this is one where you potentially could get your scout traps down on the map. Net, he has so many. This guy didn't build a contraption. These are all just individual scout traps, and just such an incredible job. I got to give a lot of credit to Net this game.
Absolutely. Also, I like the Shiver Steel pickup. It's making Sky an easier target here for TetnoJJ. Super... you know, I guess selfless in terms of what he's trying to do here. Cream gonna get locked up.
Oh, Cream gonna get chopped down. Cream! It's like he was trying to avoid the impale, but actually walks into it. The follow-up is massive, and you have to imagine that this is gonna be GankStars pushing in for the win, barring some miracle.
And Raf locked up by the gauntlet there.
Yeah, the gauntlet just buying a bit more time. Kraken marching into the base. It's going to be on this Vein Crystal turret. Should be short to go down right here. Raf's going to move around on that surfboard. Impaled, rooted in place. The damage there to follow. One turret left right here. A Scoundrel making the funny eyes at me here in this back room. I need Sona back here to defend me.
To defend you? Well, I tell you what, Sona's got a lot of defense to do because GankStars take the series 2-0 and SK out of the European Live Championships. GankStars very happy. Iraqi comes into the LAN setting, low ping, performs out of his mind, especially on this Adagio, and they're going to be going forward humanist.
Woo! I mean, these guys stretch it out, shake it out. Feels bad, man, for SK. These guys are quite talented. You know, they've put together this roster, maybe a roster that they hadn't played with as much throughout the season. Same kind of deal with GankStars. We talked about Leon not being there, but, you know, they're able to pull out this victory and looked very good doing so.
They look decisive as well, and that seems to be the influence of IraqiZorro. He talked about it, he is their shot caller, he is their leader, and every play that I saw GankStars make during this series looked decisive. And not only that, a perfect game. 0 deaths for everybody on GankStars, and again, I think that's in part due to that build from Cruel. Just no damage output, really wasn't a threat, and with the Atlas Pauldrons, even found it difficult to build those weakness stacks up onto IraqiZorro. And then also Cream, just Eve of Harvest, Broken Myth, great, but the damage output is low for Sky there.
Yeah, it just wasn't enough, and you wonder what maybe they could have done to pull themselves back into the game. But we got a couple guys that may be able to have some ideas on that one. Forecourt, Fuji, Tasty Bacon, break it down for us.
Oh, I almost misheard you on that one, but I mean, what a powerhouse match there, gentlemen. Thanks so much there at the caster desk. But back into you know, a little bit of post-analysis for this one. There's like, where to start for this one, Bacon?
Well, I mean, first of all, it feels good to be a GankStar for at least a few more hours.
A few more hours. Yeah, they have to still battle a little bit later on to make sure that they can get into the semis. But yeah, it's definitely got to be feeling good. And again, Fuji, we talked to you about this earlier. The nerves going into it. It's not quite that weight off their shoulders yet.
Yeah, I think this is really the GankStars Cerberus that a lot of us expected to see coming into the live championships, especially with a lot of their performances during the main season. They had a lot more confidence in this last game. They were constantly putting pressure on in multiple locations. It was just impressive to see.
Now, this is also a comp that we actually saw quite a bit of last weekend as well. Not only is it the triple roam, which is actually a few teams told us they're explicitly going to stay away from. I guess it wasn't GankStars amongst them, but I mean, it's a powerhouse combo right now.
Yeah, it really is. And we saw specifically TSM use this a number of times during last weekend, and it's a huge front line. I mean, massive. We're talking about Arden and Lance. They're very mobile heroes as well. And when you put Adagio behind them, he's one of the strongest auto-attacking heroes in the game, meaning you don't have to really hit skill shots, and you still do tons and tons of damage. And we see them actually not just take this draft, but also take some kind of key build paths we also saw coming out of Von C on the Lance last weekend. Not only did they bring it, but they executed it flawlessly, not dying once. I don't believe there's a lot of credit that goes to them being able to take something that was working somewhere else, bring it to Europe, and execute on it. It's not just about the draft and the builds, it's also being able to actually do it well. And I'm very proud of them for doing that.
Yeah, they really did play well. A couple of those gauntlets were absolutely massive.
3-man gauntlet.
Again, yeah, there's one that gauntlet was 3 members getting locked up. And if you end up getting a stun onto the entirety of your opponent's team, it's a pretty good way to start off a team fight.
Now, there's a few notes there from the casters as well, particularly the Kroll. And this isn't, you know, something that we get to do every day, but you love Kroll. You have your own idea of what a Kroll should be building, and it didn't actually match up to either of your specifications.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love the Kroll, but there's no damage in these builds that we've been seeing thus far this weekend. It's a single weapon blade was in the inventory at the end of the game. Like, that's just not going to cut it.
18-minute game, still got a weapon blade, Fuji?
I mean, when you see a Lance and you pick a Kroll, you're already putting yourself behind, in my opinion. The Githian Wall is a pretty significant counter to Kroll being able to get to any target. And if the Githian Wall doesn't get there, then you've got Vanguards coming, you've got Gauntlets coming, you have Impale Roots. Kroll has a really hard time getting to his target. And even if he does get to Adagio, he's just going to tickle him a little bit. I mean, he doesn't have any damage, right? It's not the kind of comp we're used to seeing. Maybe if a Fortress was in there instead, it might be a little different to be able to get some of that extra damage, but SK just couldn't bring it.
So overall, a really slick way to get into this one. As we said, GankStars not done yet. They're going to be up on deck for the last set of the series today. But if you take a look at how Group B has now ended up, I mean, Snow Tsunami and Avalanche, they're not going to be playing yet, but that's GankStars down there 2-0ing SK Gaming. So, as we said, we'll see them a little bit later on.